Welcome, everyone, to Coffee with the Codex. My name is Dot Porter, and I am a curator in the Schoenberg, Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies in the Kislak Center for Special Collections, Rare Books, and Manuscripts in the University of Pennsylvania Libraries. I am joined by my colleague, Amy Hutchins, who you see there, and she will be monitoring the chat. And this is a pretty informal affair. If you've been here before, you know, type questions as you have them, and Amy may answer, or I'll try to answer. And this event is Coffee with the Codex. This is our weekly show and tell. And usually what I do is I'll take one book, maybe two, and sort of take a deep dive. Today I'm doing something a little bit differently because I don't know if you've heard, but there's going to be an eclipse next week on Monday. And sadly, we are not in the path of totality, but I still want to talk about diagrams of eclipses. So we're going to be talking about that. We'll be looking at a lot of manuscripts, so we won't really have time to do a deep dive into any one. But as you can see, we have a variety of books here, and so they span the centuries, and they're from across geographical areas, and so it's sort of interesting. I think this is always interesting to do, to sort of see how different people at different times and different places conceived of things, especially science and astronomy. So without further ado, I want to start actually by talking about the celestial spheres, because that will sort of help us, give us a place where we can understand what's going on in these diagrams. You don't really have to understand it, but I think it's helpful because this is how medieval thinkers conceived of the world around them in their universe. All right, so this is what you usually see. So there's that. So I want to start with LJS 429. So this is a 15th century, end of the 15th century German manuscript that is in a genre of natural philosophy, which is sort of the precursor to natural science. So they were looking at the natural world and sort of seeing how the world is made. So there's a lot of interesting, it's very pretty little, it's just one little quire, paper manuscript. It's got this beautiful cover. I think it's Lady Philosophy on the cover. And we're going to skip this, which we wouldn't normally do. It's got this lovely, it's got several diagrams in it, including this guy here. But what I want to really want to show you is this diagram here, because this is a very typical diagram of what we call, and I think what they called, the celestial spheres. So we know that the solar system, we even have this term, the solar system, because it's a system that's built around the sun. We have the sun in the middle, and then the planets go around it, and then the moons go around the planets, and that's the way the world works. But from the ancient Greeks up through the 17th century, this was not the way that people thought about the system around them, what they would call the cosmos, right, or the universe. They thought that the Earth was at the center of everything. So we have Terra here. I'm showing you this one first. This is one of the later manuscripts we're going to look at today. I wanted to show it first, though, because it's really the most clear one in terms of what's happening. And then we'll go back and we'll look at some earlier ones. So we have Terra in the middle. Terra means earth. So we have the earth. And then there's aqua. So you have the earth, and then you have water on the earth. And then you have air. Here's air. And then around that, there's this red circle, which is fire. And then we have, I'm actually not sure because this is the Luna, which is the moon. And then we have, I believe it's Mercury is next, and then Venus is next, and then the sun, and then Mars, and then Jupiter, Saturn, and we go on and we sort of go out until we get to sort of God, I suppose, is like at the end, the firmament above. And the idea of the spheres is that they were literal, it was literally like, imagine a ball with layers, and the layers touch each other. And the moon or the sun or Venus or whatever sits still in the sphere, and the sphere itself moves. So you have these spheres that are moving around each other. And so when you have, let's say, Mercury in retrograde, what's happening is first the sphere of Mercury is moving one way, and then it moves the other way. So this is how they thought about the what we would call the solar system or the cosmos functioning. And interestingly, I learned about this when I was a child because I would go to church and sing in church choir, and we would sing about the music of the spheres. This was a thing, this was a concept that in medieval religion, that the spheres themselves as they moved made music. So that's sort of how I came to it, but that's where that is. So that's that. So think about that as we start looking at the other diagrams. So the next one I want to look at is it's another version of that same diagram. So this book is a lot earlier. This is LJS 26, and this is a 13th century manuscript. The text is two texts by a guy called Johannes de Sacrobosco. He was a mathematician and an astronomer, he wrote about astronomy, and his text, Tractatum de Sphera, which is about the spheres, was incredibly influential and was copied and translated, over the course of the Middle Ages. And this is a copy of that. And here, it's only a half, but again, you can see that it is the same diagram as that manuscript so this is in Italy in 13th century, and then that other manuscript 200 years later in Germany, same diagram. We don't really have Terra here, but we can say we're here, and then we have Luna, Mercury, Venus, Solus, the Sun, Mars, Jovis, Saturn, and then the firmaments out here. That's another thing that we would sing about in church choir, was the firmaments. So this is how they conceived of that there. So not quite as colorful, but much earlier. Typical diagram there. All right, so that's LJS 26. So now we're going to be going in chronological order and moving around again geographically. So LJS 216. Another thing I thought was when I selected these, I just looked for books that had diagrams of eclipses in them. I wasn't really paying attention to the text. And then I thought, well, for sure, I'm going to come up with several manuscripts that have the same text, but actually, they're different texts. Now, this is another copy of Tractatum de Sphera, the Sacrobosco text that was also in the previous one. This is another 13th century manuscript. This is from France. The other one we just looked at was in the same time in Italy. So this looks a little bit different. For one thing, it's a little bit fancier. We have a little initial of some probably monks being taught. Here, there's an instructor. There's a little bit of gold. That's very nice. But what we really want to look at is the diagrams. So let's move forward to the diagrams. We're going to start here. So here is a diagram of a lunar eclipse. And the reason that I wanted to start with the spheres is that here you can see that that's how this is conceived. So the Earth is in the middle, and then you have the moon here, and the sun here, and they're each in their own spheres. And that's how they're shown in the diagram. And what this is showing is the lunar eclipse. So you have the Earth between the sun and the moon. The sun, or the Earth is blocking the moon. And that's how that works. Which, of course, this is what a lunar eclipse does. It's just interesting that it's presented in this way as though the Earth is in the center. If we were going to draw a diagram, our diagram would look a bit different because we have this different idea of how the three relate to each other. But that is that. And I'm going to tell you right now, all of the other diagrams look pretty much like this. It's very, you can always tell when you're looking at an eclipse diagram, a medieval eclipse diagram, because they all look like this. There's another, this is not an eclipse, but here's another diagram that also shows, I think what this is showing is actually this retrograde movement. It's saying, here's what's happening, here's how these are able to move back and forth, even though, that's how they thought of the retrograde planet movement, which is sort of interesting. So there's that. And I think that is, oh no, here we go. And here is the diagram of the solar eclipse, right? So here is, again, the Earth is in the middle. We have the moon between the sun and the Earth, and it is blocking this shadow area here. And there's even a nice angle. You can tell it's sort of directed shadow there. I also want to point out that there are these lines on Earth. There's a red line in the middle and the two blue lines on the ends, and there were similar. It was a little bit, this one's smaller, but you can see it's a little bit similar here. This is showing that the center or the middle of the Earth is hot, where the equator is, and then the poles are cold. And this is another, you usually see it as its own diagram. We might see one as we're going through, but this is the temperate, the sort of showing the zones, I think is what they call it, the zone diagram. But that's another thing that you see a lot. And if you've been here before, I probably pointed them out, but it's worth remembering that. Okay, so that was LJS 216. The next one is going to be LJS 439. And all of these that we're looking at today are what we call LJS manuscripts. They're from our Schoenberg collection. And shout out to Lawrence J. Schoenberg, who collected these manuscripts during his lifetime, to Barbara Bidstel Schoenberg, who, along with Larry, gifted them to us after he passed away. And so whenever I say LJS, it's one of his manuscripts. And he had obviously impeccable taste in particularly science. He collected a lot of science and philosophy. Okay, so we're moving forward in time a little bit. This is 14th century, sometime, we don't know, made in Spain. It was written in Spain, in maybe Seville, Spain, and it is in Arabic, Arabic manuscript. So Spain at this time would have been, there would have been a lot of Arabic speakers there. And this is, interestingly, the manuscript, the text itself, is one of two known manuscripts of the Arabic original of a text called the Book on the Configuration of the Orb, orb being another word for sphere. So again, this is a sort of text about the way the universe is sort of put together. And I put first there because this also contains a diagram of the spheres. And I started with the other ones because they are in Latin, and so they're a little bit more familiar for me to show you. But having seen those, you should be able to look at this and say, oh, that is probably a diagram of the spheres, and indeed it is. I think if you counted the spheres, you'd find the right number. You have the Earth in the middle. You have a bigger space here. So there's that, and then we turn the page back, and here is another diagram of the, so we have the sun and the moon and the Earth, and it's configured, it looks a little bit different, but I'm pretty sure that that is what, this is an eclipse diagram. Although oddly, the shadow looks like it's coming out this side, so I'm not entirely sure what that is, why it's drawn like that, but that is that. And this whole manuscript is full of more of these diagrams. So here's one with the, I think this is the phases of the moon. So of course the phase of the moon is also going to depend on where the sun is in relation to the Earth and the sun. So there we go. All right. That was 29, and then the next one we're going to, this is a little bit different. A little bit different. This is not diagrams. This next one is LJS 174. LJS 174, it's much bigger. This is the biggest book we're going to look at today. And this is actually a book of tables, Alfonsine tables. And Alfonsine tables are tables that were used for not only for eclipses, but to trace conjugations, so the planets traveling over the sun and all kinds of things. Unfortunately, I was not able to figure out which tables in here are the ones specifically for eclipses. But I looked at some of the printed ones, and essentially it has the date of the eclipse, the time of the eclipse, which will depend on where you are. So you have to have a geographical area. Tables like this would usually be very geographic, specific to a geographical place. Or you might have tables that have specific cities, listed in them. So I'm sorry I can't say much more than that about these, but it's worth noting, and this manuscript is Prague, 1401 to 1404. One of the nice things about these kinds of books is that they can be pretty well both localized, that is, we know where they were written, and also in as far as the time that they were made, because they're going to have a lot of dates in them, because they're going to say, here are the dates in the next 10 years or whatever when these things are going to happen. And they had the knowledge and the math. They were able to figure out when these sorts of things would happen, because they knew how the cosmos worked as far as they understood it. So they knew the same way we know when eclipses are going to happen. So I think that's really neat. They knew a lot. They were confused about what the center of the universe was, but they did a lot with what they knew. So those are tables, Alfonsine tables. All right. The next one we'll look at is another 15th century. This is a little bit later. This is a Hebrew manuscript written in Spain or Italy in about 1460. And this includes an introduction to astronomy by a person called Isaac ben Joseph Israeli, who also has texts in another manuscript in the LJS collection, which is medical. So he was sort of polymath. He did medicine, he did astronomy, and this is another manuscript that has a lot of diagrams in it. Here's another one over here, but the one that we want to see is here. And this, I'll note, is really similar to the one that we just looked at in that Arabic manuscript, where we have the shadow sort of coming out the other side. Actually, maybe that's supposed to be the Earth. Now I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe these aren't. This isn't an eclipse, but it looks an awful lot like an eclipse to me. We've got the moon. Maybe we've got the moon. Maybe the sun is over here. I don't know. But anyway, that's. I hate questioning myself in the middle of these, but there we go. And then there's a lot of other ones here. And then there we go. So we have one more manuscript. That's another Arabic one. So we'll see what this one turns up. This one is, again, a little bit later. This is a 16th century, and it is a collection of astronomical texts by another writer. Oh, this is Persian, pardon me. It's not Arabic, it's Persian. And this is, I don't have a place for it, but it is 16th century. So let's see. One of the things that I think is really fun about this one is that it opens like a notebook. It like an old-fashioned, I think of journalists in the 50s carrying little books like this, but it's kind of fun that this came up here. And so here we go. And here we go. Another. So everybody should know. You've got a quiz now. Everybody should know what this is. We have our diagram of the spheres with the Earth in the middle, and then all of the spheres going out to this firmament. We've got the sun and the moon and everybody there. Samuel, I just saw Samuel Smith has a note, the Ptolemaic, referring back to predicting eclipses, the Ptolemaic system was quite accurate at predicting eclipses, even though the science was wrong. Yeah, it's really amazing how much they got right, even when they didn't really, I want to say their understanding was sort of incomplete. So there's that. And then here, we've seen something similar to this. So this, again, this is not eclipses. This is the phases of the moon here. So we've got the full moon is here, and then the no moon is here, and then you have, I can never remember which one gibbous. You've got waning and waxing and gibbous and all the things. But that's pretty good there. And again, this is the Earth, and here's the sun. I'm pretty sure that's the sun. Okay, and then again, yes, this one, this diagram has that same look where we've got the. Oh no, I am wrong. So this is the lunar eclipse, right? So we've got the sun and the Earth blocking the light to the moon here, and then I'm guessing that if I turn the page, yes. Now we have the solar eclipse. So we have the light coming out from the sun, the moon comes between and blocks that. So there we go. That's everything I have for you. I believe this is all of the eclipses or not eclipses. I'm gonna have to figure out what those other, if I'm right about those other diagrams. But this is how medieval people thought about eclipses. So if you were educated and knowledgeable and you knew the right people, you would maybe know that there was an eclipse coming up. I think for most people, eclipses would still be a little bit of a surprise. So there you go. I hope that if you're in a place where you can see the eclipse, that you'll get to see it. And I think we're supposed to be 88% totality, but it's not. I don't think we'll notice anything here. But anyway, that is all. So thank you all so much for coming. Come Tuesday if you can. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And otherwise, I hope I'll see you next Thursday. So thank you everyone so much for coming.